Hello friends, I'm Addie, and you are now watching Books and Tea Time. If you're watching this video, you likely have already seen part 1 of this video, which is me reading the first half of Wind and Truth. If you have not seen that video yet, you might want to watch that first. This book was just too darn long for me to fit it all in one spoiler video. In this video, we are going to be reading days 6 through 10, all the way up to the end of Wind and Truth. It's an emotional ride, but we're here to go on this journey together. Really, we're just here for a fun time and for a long time because, I mean, this book's 1,300 pages and I'm only human and I love to gab. Let's just jump right in. Hello, it is time for the very first check-in in part 2 of this reading vlog because your girl has finished day 6. This is where we're at. You can kind of see we're like, I think 54 or 55% of the way in. I think this time, let's start with our Shinovar squad. So at the end of day 5, the last we see of them is the Herald Nal shows up, and immediately it's like 1 step forward, 2 steps back for Szeth. So he's just like back to his previous thought processes. And also there's a lot of back and forth between Kaladin and Nail about whose philosophy is better. The other really interesting thing about our Shinovar squad is that in this day we get our very first Syl perspective in the entire series. We've never ever been in Syl's head before. She's really making a lot of strides towards corporeality. And then there's a scene, so the next monastery that they go to is the Lightweaver Monastery, and instead of it being a traditional battle, the Lightweaver honor bearer gives Szeth like a puzzle to do basically, and so Syl goes and is like sneaking around and helping him do this puzzle. So they solve the puzzle, but then as Szeth is leaving the monastery, Syl realizes that they're trying to trick him, and so she quickly like grabs Kaladin and is like, one of the acolyte like people are gonna try and kill Szeth, and so she manifests as a shard spear and he like throws it and kills the guy, and they save Szeth's life. That's really all that happens to the Shinovar squad. We obviously get some Szeth flashbacks, which I guess we can talk about next. We're seeing Szeth as he's a young adult training to be an honor bearer, and one of the honor bearers, Civi, convinces him to go on like the journey to challenge all of the honor bearers. She's also sleeping with his dad, so that's kind of awkward. But at the end of the flashbacks that we see, he gets into an argument with his sister, who is kind of like also reaching the point of being fed up with like constantly having to follow him around. Next, we get another couple of chapters with Jasna, and she and Ivory, they have a bad feeling. They have a foreboding sense that they're missing something. And so they start to like write down these like assumptions that they have about Odium and about the Singer armies, and she realizes that one huge assumption that they've made that could possibly come back to really bite them in the butt is that the armada that they see on the horizon coming towards Thalanar could be just like a skeleton crew, so to speak. So like they're like, it could be entirely possible that they are just a distraction to pull soldiers away from the other areas that are being attacked. At the very end of her perspective, she's like, I need to get Windrunners to go investigate that, because if that is the case, we got some serious corrections to make. We get like 1 chapter with Adolin in Azamir, and it is not good news. So he and Yanagon are just, you know, doing their regular ritual of playing towers and talking strategy, but the main huge punch to the gut that we get at the end of this part is Adolin finds out via their scouts that help is not coming. And they find out that not only are the forces not coming, but they're not coming because their allies in Emule and Tashik have betrayed them. They made a deal with Odium, and so that obviously crushes Adolin. Now for the 2 parts of this section that are like big reveal moments, I guess. We've got Shallan and company and Dalinar and company in the spiritual realm. So because of all of the instances where Shallan has had Formless pop up, they start watching the visions in the spiritual realm from like outside of the vision. So they create, with the help of Gliss and Toomey, this like scaffolding on the outside of the vision, but they get into a vision where Mishram appears, and like it's like Mishram from the past, not like current her. But Shallan's like, I gotta go in. This is our chance to engage with her. So she goes into the vision. She finds out that Mishram is going around battlefield in a desolation, I think, and healing fallen soldiers, and basically saying like, Odium doesn't care about me. He doesn't care about us. Go and live your life, like giving people a second chance. So Shallan's in the singer body, and she starts talking to Mishram, and she asks her, why is Odium afraid of you? Do you think he's afraid of you because you could actually replace him? And when she says that, there's like a shift in the vision, because real Mishram, like present day, current, live action Mishram, if you will, I guess it like catches her attention and like brings her into the vision. And so she starts freaking out and asking Shallan, like, how do you know that? Like, how did you figure that out? And Shallan says,
I've been there. I've killed those who've created me as well.
Mishram's reaction to that is to shatter the vision, and she basically sends Shallan sprawling into the spiritual realm by herself. Similarly, Dalinar and Navani, their first vision is they see the heralds planning the recreants when they basically sacrifice Taln and give up their blades, and they see that Honor was there and that they are basically begging Honor to change the bond because they can't handle the mental, physical, emotional toll of constantly going to this hell plane. And Honor basically tells them like, no, I can't help you, and then abandons them. At the very end of that day, Dalinar, Navani, and Gavnor have made it to their next vision, which is days before the death of Honor. And then we have the interludes, and we have two crazy interludes this time. So the first interlude is Diel, I think is how you would say it, and she is the granddaughter of Eam, who is a perspective in the interludes in one of the other books. She lives in Eerie, which is up here. In this interlude, first of all, there's Mistborn characters again in this interlude, but actual Mistborn characters that I know. Demu is there. There's also a couple other people, but like their names weren't ringing a bell. Basically, the Mistborn characters are there, and Dial and her family mistake them for murderers and are like afraid of them at first, and then they're like, hey, no, we're just like world hopping. We're just here for a minute. But at the end of the interlude, this portal opens and the people of Eerie start like evacuating Roshar. I don't know where the hell they're going. The second one is of course our Odium interlude, and this one is wild. I had to set the book down and just like stare into space for a few seconds after this interlude, because this one is just like, you realize how far gone Taravangian Odium is. But basically, Cultivation tries to pull a fast one on him, and so she sends assassins into Kharbranth to attack his family. And she's like, I'll call them off, but you have to promise to reach a truce agreement with Dalinar. And his reaction is, oh, you think you're crazy? I am batshit. And he floods and completely wipes out Kharbranth as a reaction. He's like, I see your assassins and I raise you a cataclysmic natural disaster that is going to wipe out all of the people that I love and that I've traded my whole life and done all of this to protect, and I'll kill them and the assassins because that's how committed I am to my mission. I literally just wrote, damn. I don't know if you can see that. That's the end of day 6 and the end of the interludes. I'm gonna keep on reading, and I'll check back with you once I have more to say. Peace out. Hello, friends. We have so much to talk about. I went on an absolute reading binge. I finished day 7 last night, and I also am a huge chunk of the way through day 8, which is absolutely wild, bonkers, explosive. But before we can get into the absolute craziness that is day 8, we have to finish talking about day 7. So that's what I'm here to do with you right now. So last time we talked about how Layton died because Moash showed up and killed him. Sigzil apparently is on his way out, or his days are numbered, I guess. And while we were talking about Sigzil yesterday, we were also talking about Adolin and what's going on with him, and we have more developments. So I guess let's start there. A Thunderclast shows up at the battle in Cosmere and kills the other shard bearer that they have. And so Adeline is like actively like chasing this thunderclast that is on its way to the dome, and they are like chasing after it with like this chain that they're basically trying to use to like trip the thunderclast. He gets on this building and then jumps on its back and is like dangling from the back of this thunderclast as the thunderclast is like waving back and forth trying to shake him off. He ends up being able to get high enough to like stab it right at the base of its neck, and that kills it. But the bad news is, as it's like dying and falling over, it falls on top of Adeline. And the next time we are in his perspective, we find out that he loses his leg. One of his legs is stuck underneath of the thunderclast, and so when he comes to, they're like desperately trying to heal him with the radiants that they have, but the radiants that are there aren't like skilled enough to heal his leg entirely. And then sort of adjacent to that, we also get a very, very short perspective from the Herald Ash. I think we knew this and I completely forgot about it, but she and the Herald Talm actually go with the army to Cosmere, and so they are in the tent with the wounded when the thunderclast is like barreling toward the Oath Gate. Adeline and the other shard bearer who dies are obviously over there trying to deal with that, and while that's happening, the fused actually break through the dome, and so the fused are basically like in a great position to take the city and take the palace. But Abidi the monarch, he orders the fused army to go and murder all of the wounded to like demoralize the army. But Town and Ash are there, and so the Herald Talonellet, once he realizes that they're about to kill all of these wounded people, he goes crazy and kills a bunch of the fused defending these sick people, which is pretty cool. That's pretty much everything that goes on in Cosmere. But what is going on with our little spiritual realm group? Last we saw of them, Mishram and Shallan kind of have this like standoff battle, and Mishram scatters them all. So when we see them in day 7 for the first time, they are all experiencing visions from their past. Renarin is seeing this moment from when he was a teenager, and he's getting sort of like bullied. Relane's memory that he's in is when the Singer army is meeting and they decide that they need to send spies in. Everybody is like offering to go, and they keep saying like, oh, well, you can't go because you're so valuable and important. And then Relane offers to go, and everybody's like, oh, that's a great idea. Nobody has any objections, and so he feels very dejected, and so he's reliving that memory. Shallan is supposed to see the day that she kills her mom, but she actually hijacks her memory, and Renarin is like low-key thriving in the spiritual realm, honestly. He's so used to, as an autistic person, he is used to experiencing the world as overwhelming blend of like sensory inputs and like trying so hard to organize them. So even though the spiritual realm is complete chaos, he is like uniquely equipped to deal with it. There's also a really, really cute moment where Renarin finds Relane in his own vision, and they have like a sort of romantic moment where Renarin asks him like, have you ever thought about what it would be like for a listener and a human to be in a relationship? And at first Relane's like, no, and then he's like, actually, no, that's a lie. I think about it all the time. And then they end up holding hands, and they're like, I mean, like, I feel like we should try it. It's just like they're sort of the light at the end of the tunnel, I think, for some of these parts, because like all of this like really intense stuff is happening. But then their next thing is they go into a vision that Dalinar and Navani are in. So let's jump over to Dalinar and Navani, because they all eventually experience this huge vision. They've arrived in the days leading up to the death of Honor. They're following a Radiant named Gareth. They're seeing that there's a lot of the Radiant orders are basically falling apart. The Skybreakers figure out the truth about how the Radiants destroyed their homeworld. The bondsmith of that time, Maleshi, abandons the tower, and that's when the sibling goes to sleep. Dalinar's next vision that he and Navani go to is what he calls a parlay. It's basically the beginning of a peace talk between singers and humans, and then after that part of the vision ends, he goes to this secret meeting. And Dalinar thinks that it's like, oh, he's betraying the humans. These singers come to meet with Gareth, and this female singer warrior rolls up and she kisses Gareth. So they are in a romantic relationship, and her people are coming to show the Windrunners, like, hey, this negotiation is in good faith. We have a new god, and our new god is Mishram. We're gonna have this united world where humans and singers can live together. But the really, really depressing and sad part about this is that Dalinar, he knows this vision he's about to see is the imprisonment of Mishram. Maleshi, the bondsmith, comes and he has this gemstone. Maleshi approaches her with this gemstone and is basically about to imprison her, and then he hesitates. And then Dalinar hears the voice of honor commanding him to imprison Mishram. And then when that happens, when Mishram is imprisoned, all of the singers are all turned into parshmen. They are forced to enter slave form. Dalinar goes up to confront Honor and realizes the Stormfather is created in Honor's image after Honor's death, I guess. And so the Stormfather is basically Honor and has been this whole time. And Dalinar is like, why would you do this? You've known this whole time. You've been lying to me. And Honor goes, you know too much. I have to reveal you to Odium now. And so Taravangian's Odium finds all of them in the spiritual realm and like scatters them again, is like, okay, I'll deal with you when I have time to deal with you, basically. And then like hones in on Dalinar. Okay, I have to get ready to go. So I will come on later tonight, I guess, and we can talk about the Szeth flashbacks and the Kaladin and Syl stuff and the Lift interlude. So when I come back, we'll have all of my favorite little babies to talk about, and then we can talk about day 8 tomorrow. Okay, peace out. I gotta go. Okay, hello everybody. It is actually a few days later. We have to finish really quickly talking about day 7 because I just finished day 8 last night and I genuinely, my brain is in a million different places. Really quickly, I just want to finish going over my notes from day 7. We still have to talk about Kaladin, Szeth, Syl, and then the interludes. Starting with the Szeth flashbacks. There's not a whole lot that happens in day 7 as far as the flashbacks. He defeats and kills the Windrunner honor bearer because he insists on doing a fight to the death rather than just like a fight to like there's a clear winner, I guess. So Szeth has to kill him and then he takes his place, which is like marking him as basically he is now the Windrunner honor bearer. And at the very end of day 7, the last flashback that we get is the voice speaks to him and says, okay, now that you have come this far, you can meet me. And then in the present timeline with Cal, Szeth, Syl, and now Nail is also part of the squad, I guess, reluctantly, I must admit. So Szeth's Spren approaches Kaladin and asks him for help because he has noticed that Szeth is slowly but surely getting a little bit better from talking to Kaladin. And so Szeth's Spren, we find out, is named 12124. He's at war with his instincts of what he thinks is right and what the High Spren code is like demanding of him, more or less. He basically just comes to Kaladin and he's like, what should I do? And Kaladin is like, you know, you gotta follow your gut, you gotta follow your instincts if you think this is wrong. And he's like not super thrilled with that advice. He's like, you're supposed to tell me what to do. And Kaladin's like, no, actually, all I do is listen. But then the wind starts talking to Kaladin again. And the wind is like, listen, I need you to help the heralds. Can you please help Nal? Can you please help Ishar? Can you help all of these heralds? Because despite everything that they've done, I love them. Now, last but not least, we have the interludes. And we have our Lift interlude. So Lift, this whole time, has been pretending to be Navani so that people don't realize that Navani and Dalinar are both in the spiritual realms, but she hates it, obviously. She's feeling super guilty about being the one who was with Gavnor when he was sucked into the spiritual realm and like not knowing his fate and what's going on with him. She feels really guilty about that. And so like things are just like she's down in the dumps. So the sibling starts talking to Lift Lift. And the sibling is like, hey, what is the game like Peekaboo or Peekaboo? And Lift is like, oh, it's a game that you play with babies. Why are you asking me that? And the sibling responds and is like, I heard a voice saying it like in some part of the tower. Lift realizes that it's her chicken when Mraize captures her, and she sees that Mraize has like this like chicken in a cage, and like they bond, and she really likes this chicken. So she's like, okay, hero mode activated. I finally have something that I can do. So she goes to save this chicken. And if you'll remember, I actually don't know if I told you this, but when we get Zahil's interlude, he's imprisoned, but he's imprisoned with this chicken because he's imprisoned by an associate of Mraize. So when she gets there and she breaks in, Zahil, Vasher is there hanging. She does her hero lift edge dancer thing, and she is able to save the chicken and save Zahil, Vasher. And once she does, he's like,
that is like the most spectacular display of raw talent I've ever seen.
And she's like,
what are you talking about? Like, I fell all over myself. I'm so clumsy.
And he says to her, great power more or less requires a lot of practice and requires a lot of training, or it comes off as clumsiness. And he looks at her and he says,
you need a teacher.
And her response, of course, is,
you need some pants.
Which is hysterical. But it sparks this moment of like the perfect dream team in all of the Cosmere. Vasher, who's my favorite character from Warbreaker, deciding to be the mentor and trainer of one of my absolute favorite characters in Stormlight Lift. But like, you know, the main thing is she has decided within herself, she's like, I have to change, or no one is gonna change how they treat me. Iconic moment. Absolutely loved it. The Odium chapter interlude is really short. He just says like, I'm gonna break Dalinar and put him back together the way that I want him to be put back together. But that's the end of day 7. Let me gather my thoughts and everything on day 8, and then we can sit down and talk about it. I'll be back soon. Okay, y'all. This is when things get crazy. Let's do a progress shot. First of all, this is what our tabbies look like. Here is what our progress marker looks like. Day 8 was explosive. It was just like crazy reveal after crazy reveal. The amount of times I gasped aloud while reading this day. Let's get into it. I have my notes, and I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in order from least crazy perspective, least crazy thing that happened, to most crazy thing that happens, in my opinion. First things first, nothing really happens with Sigzil or Adolin in this part. They're still struggling. The Shattered Plains is running hella low on Stormlight. Okay, the second thing, let's talk about Dalinar, because at the end of day 7, Odium finds him and everybody else in the spiritual realm that's there and sort of scatters them. And he hones in on Dalinar because he's like, I need to break this guy. So he's basically showing Dalinar a highlight reel of all of his greatest failures in life. He shows him when he's super hammered the night that Gavilar dies and is assassinated by Zeth. He shows him and shows Gavinor the scene in Way of Kings at the end where he beats the crap out of Elhokar and is like, if I wanted to kill you, I would kill you, so trust me. And then finally he shows him and shows Gavinor the night that Evie dies and that he burns that whole city to the ground, the Rift I think it's called. But he starts to fight back and, you know, just like relive the vision. Is like, okay, like what would I do now? I would reverse my orders. I would tell them to stop burning everything. And then at some point he sees this like anchor of light and he grabs it and he just like is overwhelmed by all of his failures and the pain and the suffering associated with all of his failures. And he uses that anchor and pulls himself and escapes Odium. So he pulls himself away, and his destination that he arrives at the other side of the bond is the Stormfather. And the Stormfather is like cowering in fear on the ground, just like writhing in pain because he also has shameful failures that he's hiding behind. And so at the end of the day, the last scene in day 8 is Dalinar asking him like, show me what you are so upset about. Let's bear this burden together because I have obviously messed up too. So we don't actually see what happens. I'm assuming that's in day 9. Okay, number 3 on our most crazy things is in the physical realm, Taravangian Odium appears to Jasna in Thalanar. And he basically says, you know, kudos to you for figuring out that there was a skeleton crew on those ships, but I don't actually need them to take Thalanar because I'm here personally to see to it that they betray you. He says, prepare your argument arguments because this time tomorrow, you and I are going to present our arguments to Queen Fen and Thalana, and, you know, may the best arguer win. This is how he envisions he's going to break her, I think. But that was pretty crazy, and she's like super disturbed when she realizes, oh, Dalinar also figures it out. I forgot to mention that. But in this day, Dalinar and Jasna both figure out that the new odium is Taravangian, and they are both like, oh shit, this is really bad. Okay, climbing up this ladder of crazy, next we have Venli and the listeners arrive at Narok Prime, and they go into this like tunnel, and they go underneath the plateau, and they find this glowing gold pool of power that apparently is Odium's pool. It's reading very Well of Ascension-ish if you've read the original Mistborn trilogy in Well of Ascension and all the stuff that's going on there. And so Venli says that like the pool of Odium apparently has been MIA for millennia and they just found it, I guess. And so now Venli and the singers know where this pool of power is. And then Venli's like, okay, like this is what has caused the Everstorm crashing here and the destruction of the city in the Shattered Plains from ancient times, and singers coming here to change forms, chasm fiends coming here to pupate. Like, this well of power is clearly affecting on a large scale everything that happens in the Shattered Plains. Okay, Szeth flashback. So Szeth finally goes to meet the voice in this cave. It is obviously confirmed. Szeth realizes, oh, this voice is an unmade. And not only is it an unmade, it is like the #1 enemy of humanity. It is like one of the most dangerous unmade. We don't get a name for it. I don't know if I'm supposed to know what the name for it is, but when Szeth walks in, they've got Spren nailed to the walls of their evil lair. So this cave is just full of Spren that are like writhing and being tortured and like misshapen. And Szeth is obviously like immediately red flag what's happening. And so he flees the scene and goes to tell everyone like, okay, the desolation is here, guys. It's time to do what we've been trained to do and defend the people of Shinovar. Fast forward to the present with Szeth, Kaladin, and Syl. They get to the Dustbringer Monastery, and Szeth decides he is not going to fight. So he like kneels down as this honor bearer who like has a shroud over their face is like, fight me and I'm gonna kill you. And Szeth's like, no, I'm not fighting you. And then we find out it's Elid, his sister, who he hasn't seen in years, and the last time they met she said she hated him and she can't kill him. They have this really emotional embrace. Then after they decide like, okay, we're not gonna fight to the death and we're not gonna kill each other, Elid is like, oh, they haven't told you what your mission is? Hold on, I have to pull up the references here for this scene because this scene's insane. They haven't told you? She pulled back and started to unravel. You don't know? Know what? Szeth asked, clinging to her hands. Why am I here, Elid? The oath pact is broken, she said, her face distorting. He's summoning me, trying to stop me, but I know. The circle is shattered, the heralds degrade. They need someone new. They need you, Szeth. This pilgrimage is an audition. Basically, Nin, whatever his name is, confirms that Szeth in this pilgrimage is auditioning to be a herald of the Almighty. And Szeth looks him in the face and says,
Harold? Me? Are you insane?
say what you will about Szeth, but he is self-aware. So he's not too keen on this, but there's still a lot to come. We have arrived at the craziest reveal. The one for me that broke my brain. Shallan Daver is the daughter of a herald of the Almighty.
Shallan is the daughter of a herald.
We're with Shallan, right? She's still in the spiritual realm. She has finally agreed to see the vision of killing her mom. Vale and Radiant have been begging her to confront this past. Pattern and Testament know that it is something she needs to do. So she goes back in time and she finds Harold Null. He's always in these scenes. He is just a troublemaker. In this scene that she's remembering, her mother, Shauna, the Herald, is talking to Nail and he's like, I warned you this was gonna happen, but your daughter has clearly bonded to Spren. She's a budding Radiant, and so we gotta kill her. She goes to kill kill Shalin, and that's when Shalin manifests Testament as a shard blade and kills her mom in self-defense because her mom's coming at her with a knife. But when Shalin kills her mom, it sends Shauna to Braze, and then she breaks and comes back, and that's what sparks the desolation. So that's the end of day 8. We've got Dalinar and the Stormfather clearly about to embark on some wild journey together. Venli finding a pool of all of the powers of the gods. Jasna's gonna debate Odium, apparently, for Thalen City. Zeth finally meets the voice, and it's torturing Spren and nailing him to the walls. In the present, he fights the ghost of his sister Elid and finds out he's gonna be a herald, maybe? And Shalin is the daughter of Chanrok. I have to lock in, though, because we still have to talk about the interludes. Oh my god. We get a Ryzen interlude. So Ryzen has just arrived at Earthru to negotiate patent technology. Just a real brief recap. If you haven't read Dawn Shard, you should, because there's a lot of stuff that happens in Dawn Shard. At the end of Dawn Shard, Ryzen becomes a Dawn Shard, which basically means that she has absorbed and is protecting a shard of a god that was shattered into a bunch of pieces, and so she has these crazy powers. And so she's in this negotiation, and Wit, who is wearing the guise of Dalinar Kholin, walks in and is like, who are you? And Ryzen's like, I could ask you the same thing because you're clearly not Dalinar. And two of her like sleepless companions come in and they're like, don't talk to this man. He used to have a Dawn Shard, but then he gave up the power. And Ryzen looks at them and is like, no, like he is a Dawn Shard right now because the powers are trying to like merge. They're trying to collide together. So like there's a lot of stuff going on with Wit where I guess like at one point he was a Dawn Shard and then he gave up the power and maybe hid it away and then resorbed it and is trying to keep that a secret, but then Ryzen outs him, and so he's like, I will make sure that we never see each other again, and then he runs off. And then at the end of the interlude, the Sleepless and Ryzen are talking and they're like, okay, like we're still kind of safe because Wit isn't going to betray us to like odium and honor and cultivation, but we're also not super safe because our secret has low-key been revealed. I think what happens is at the end of that chapter, they are making a plan to go off-world. And then the Odium interlude, again, is really, really short. Basically, it's just him being, like, shocked that Dalinar is able to escape him in the spiritual realm. And then he also, at the end of his interlude, is like, should I destroy the power of honor? And I'm like, do you have the ability to do that? Because if you do, that's bad. But that's it, folks. That's the end of day 8. As soon as I have updates, I will be back to talk more with you all. Peace out. Okay, hello, friends. I'm here for just a quick update because I am slowly but surely making my way through day 9. We're at 79%, which is pretty terrifying. I wanted to come on to just tell you a few things that have been happening, and also because I'm scared. I'm about to start chapter 118, which is called Prophecy, and I'm really, really scared Sigil's about to die. So I wanted to take a pause. Oh, say hello. This is Arista, my baby girl. Yeah, so just a few quick updates on what's going on. Navani is able to outsmart Odium and she finds Gavinor and then escapes. So she revisits some visions from her past where like she figures out that she can kind of like manipulate the visions a little bit. And so she manipulates the vision and tricks it into taking her to the night of Elokar's death because she knows that Gavinor is there and that was a very traumatic experience for him. So she's like, oh, if I'm being shown things that are traumatic, he's probably also being shown things that are traumatic and he'll probably be there. And she does find him in that vision and is able to escape to the vision version of the Oath Gate. And when she's in that Oath Gate, she's able to connect to the sibling, and then the sibling brings her back to the physical realm. So she and Gavinor make it out, and she's like feeling very guilty about leaving Dalinar behind, but like at the same time she is like, I have to get Gavinor out of here. I have to get back to the physical realm so that they have at least one bondsmith. So they make it back, and she goes and finds Lift impersonating her, and then Wit shows up and is like, okay, like, let me catch you up. So that's what's going on with them. The Zeth flashbacks, he basically, in response to figuring out that the Unmade has tricked all of the other honor bearers and like overtaken Shinovar, he gets all of the other Windrunner like squires to form an army, and like he's like moving against all of the other honor bearers, and then he eventually gets to like the Bondsmith monastery area, and his dad has been busy apparently, and his dad is now the Bondsmith honor bearer, and his dad tells him to his face, like, no, son, I'm sorry, you're wrong. The Voidbringers they're not a thing anymore. The desolation is not actually here. I'm so sorry, but you're wrong. And that really, really just shatters Zeth. Just now I read the chapter where he is given the Oath Stone and he is determined to be truthless and sent off to the east. We get a couple of chapters in the perspective of God, and a lot of like deep history, but I'm gonna wait until the update so that I can like fully write down and gather my thoughts on that. The last thing that I'll just update you on really quickly before I start reading is that Zeth gets to the Skybreaker Monastery, which is Nal is the Skybreaker honor bearer. It's his freaking blade, so he, even though he's a herald, is the honor bearer for that monastery, and Zeth refuses to fight him. So Kaladin steps in because Nal goes to like murder Zeth, and so Kaladin steps in and stops him and is like, Zeth, do you want my help? And Zeth says yes. And so Zeth nominates Kaladin to be his champion and to fight Nal on his behalf. And so they start fighting. It's like, you know, pretty intense obviously, but Kaladin is doing really well. Comparatively, he's fighting a herald, and Nal is like, wow, you're really impressive. I'm actually gonna have to like use some of my herald powers on you. And then he's like beating the crap out of Kaladin, and then Zeth intervenes, and then the wind, like Kaladin's like, I know you want me to help these guys, but you know, he's gonna kill me. Can you help me at all? So then the wind sends back all of the versions of the song that Kaladin has been practicing on the flute throughout their journey in Shinovar, and the power of this song, which is, you know, a song from the original Coming to Roshar. It's like a song that Nal remembers and that holds a lot of like emotion for him because it reminds him of a time when he defended the innocent and when he was in control of himself. It kind of like crushes him and he just like collapses and starts weeping because he realizes that over time, as he became more and more mentally unstable because of the torture and everything, that he started to distrust himself, and so he relied on the law to be the ultimate end all be all, even though the law can be flawed. And then Zeth and Kaladin kind of like offer him a hand and are like, okay, like we're gonna figure out how to move forward together. Kaladin is, you know, he's grinding. I mean, for being the first therapist ever to exist on Roshar, he is balling out. I have like a sort of hunch / working theory that Kaladin is actually the one who's going to become a herald and not Zeth. Either that or he's gonna die. It's either gonna be really good or it's gonna be really bad. I kind of hope that he becomes a herald, because if he becomes a herald, then he's immortal and Syl is also immortal and they're clearly in love. So then they can just like rule the Cosmere together. Anyway, I'm gonna go read more and probably read Sigzil's death, and that is going to crush me. And then I'm gonna go to bed. Peace out. Thoughts and prayers to Sigzil. Bye. Hello friends, it's the next day, the next night, I guess. And as I predicted last night, I only got a couple more chapters read. I still have a couple chapters left in day 9, but before I finish, because I'm sure there's gonna be so many more explosive things that happen at the end of day 9, I wanted to come on and tell you the other things that I forgot to tell you last night. Real quick, let's run through just some of the small bits. Azamir is basically about to fall. They're down real bad. They're to the point that they are even asking the wounded to come and fight. So Adolin stumbles off on his like peg leg into this battle and they need a miracle real bad, but I'm hoping that Maya is gonna roll up and save the day pretty soon here. Sigzil didn't die. Basically, the next worst thing did happen. So they're fleeing through the Oath Gate and going back to Urthuru, and then Moaz shows up with another one of those like anti-radiant power fabrials, and so Sigzil falls to the ground and he's like really injured because he falls like 30 feet out of the sky, and Moash comes up with like the anti-void light knife and is trying to kill Vienta. And so in like a moment of desperation, Sigzil renounces his oaths and breaks his oath, and so he's not a radiant anymore, and like Vienta is sent back into Shadesmar, and like his thought process is like there is a chance that we can rehabilitate Deadeye Spren. At least that's what like Adeline's relationship with Maya indicates. So it's better to give her a chance to be rehabilitated and to live as a Deadeye Spren in Shadesmar than for her to die now. So Bridge 4, the gang rolls up and scares Moash off. Lopen comes and brings, you know, Scar and everybody else, and they are able to get him back to Urthuru to a Radiant who can heal his wounds. So they get through the Oath Gate and then they lock the Oath Gate. So they have ostensibly retreated and given up the Shattered Plains, but there's like some hints that Sigzil and Venli have a plan, or they do have a plan that we as the reader are not privy to yet. But I think what's happening is that Venli and the listeners and the Chasm Fiends are pretending to be part of the Singer army, part of Odium's army. And so my theory is that they are going to at some point reveal that they are part of the human army, and then therefore by them being there, the contract will consider that land claimed by like the good guys rather than Odium. And then Jasna debates Taravangian for Thalana and loses. She like almost wins, and she's like got all these great points and she's doing well, but ultimately Taravangian just like plays her so hard, and like truly like you see how like this is supposed to be her lesson. Like he's teaching her a lesson, like he's trying to teach Dalinar a lesson, and he ends up convincing Queen Fen to make a deal with him and join his empire by turning Jasna's own past against her and like saying, you know, you always claim that you are interested in the highest good or like the most good for the most people, but at the end of the day, you will always put your family and your people of Alethkar before anybody else. And so Queen Fen's best option is to come with me. So that's a huge blow to Jasna. It's a huge blow to, you know, the quote-unquote good guys. Like Odium has secured Thalana in the final hours of day 9. The next crazy thing, so after Kaladin and Nail have their little battle and Nail surrenders, and after like losing this battle and, you know, coming to terms with a lot of his own inner problems, Nail reveals to them that the voice is not in fact an unmade, but that the voice is Ishar and has been Ishar this whole time, and he is trying to replace the heralds. So like the whole time in Shinovar, he kept, you know, influencing all of these honor bearers, hoping that they would ascend to become heralds and take the place of all of the other heralds that Ishar doesn't like, but none of them ever would. And then like Szeth came along and he was so obedient and he was such a great fighter, but then he figured it out and fled and ruined all of his plans. Nail also confirms that Ishar has taken up part of Odium's power because he found Odium's well of power. And so as a herald, as the bondsmith, honor bearer, and herald, he uses that power to manipulate the land and the Spren in Shinovar. They have to now go confront this man. The last thing are we get several chapters in the perspective of God, in the perspective of Honor, the Almighty, Tanavast, whatever you want to call him. Basically, we start at 10,000 years ago.
10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck.
So here is a quick rundown of some of the main points of his flashbacks, if you will. 10,000 years ago, he and Cultivation come to Roshar, and they adopt this planet, the land, and the people on it because they have orphaned them, because either they killed Adon Alcium, either they killed him or just Honor did, I'm not sure. But they killed this shard, and in doing so, orphaned the planets in this system. So he and Cultivation come to Roshar, and they're in love. They had like a forbidden romance situation for a couple thousand years, I guess, or just like living their happy little lives, influencing the planet and becoming gods to the singers. And then Rays shows up and things go sideways. So originally Rays goes to Ashen, which is the planet that the humans are on, and he starts building this empire and like being their god and giving them all these powers and stuff. And so Honor is like, that's not good. I can't let this slide. We got to get ahead of this. So he intervenes and starts giving powers to people on Ashen that are rebelling against Odium, aka Nail and his people. In doing so, both of their influences blow up Ashen. That's how it turns to fire. Things are going bad. Radiants are using the Surges Unbound. Honor and Rays are there, and their two influences completely destroy the planet. And Honor is absolutely crushed and heartbroken by this turn of events. So he flees back to Roshar, and then following behind him through the portal are refugee humans who are coming through the portal, and of course Rays comes with them. So now they're not only sharing a planetary system, they are sharing a planet. So Rays inserts himself and tries to, and successfully does, become a deity to the singers, because while Honor was helping the humans on Ashen, the singers interpreted that as like Honor abandoning them as a god. And so in sort of like a revenge situation, they start worshiping Odium, and Honor's really pissed about that, but the humans are there now, so then he starts being the god to the humans. Then Cultivation, Rays, and Honor acknowledge that if any of them fight, they will destroy the whole planetary system, and they don't want a repeat of what happened on Ashen. So they make this little pact to keep each other in check, to keep their powers in check, so none of them can like completely blow up another planetary system. While that's going on, Honor reaches out to the other shards in like the Cosmere for help, and is basically like, come help me destroy Rays, I'm sick of him. And they all say, no, he's your problem, he's bound to Roshar now, we don't give a shit as long as he doesn't escape. That is where we leave off with Tanavast, is that he, in desperation because none of the other shards will help him, turns to humans again, and that's when he bonds the heralds. But that's where we leave off. Thanks for listening to me yap. Good night. Sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite. Peace out. I am unwell. I'm so scared. I have 90 pages left. Let me show you where we're at. We have this much left in Wind and Truth. I don't want to finish because I don't want it to be over, but I have to know what happens. Since we last talked, I finished day 9, obviously, which was like not that many chapters, and I am like a huge chunk of the way through day 10, obviously. I'm gonna try to finish it like now, today, in the next like few hours or so. But before we do that, I have to just like tell you some stuff because things are happening, things are crazy. Let me give you the last bits of day 9 and where I'm at so far in day 10. First things first, I'm gonna give you the like last bits of the Tanavast perspectives that we get. Honor makes a deal with Odium and is like, let's just agree once and for all, like we can't both exist together on this planet. Let's agree once and for all to select champions to fight in our stead, because if we fight directly, we will destroy everything. We do find out that like the scene that Venli sees where Narok is destroyed is literally just like Tanavast and Odium getting into like a quick shoving match. So Honor's like, let's do a contest of champions, and Odium agrees, but he's like, first you have to take out Mishram for me because she's trying to replace me. So that's why Honor convinces Maleshi and the Radiants to betray Mishram and imprison her, but he did not foresee that it was going to turn all of the Parshendi into slave form. So he's like, oh god, I have really messed up, and like it corrupts his sense of self. The power starts rejecting him. In a fit of like pain and madness, he shows the Radiants a possible future where their bonds destroy Roshar, their surges destroy Roshar, and then he flees and leaves. And so like the power's rejecting him, and as Odium comes and is like killing him, he is like begging the wind for help. And so the wind takes his memories and gives them to the Stormfather, who is like his avatar. So the Stormfather has all of Tanavast's memories and has like a piece of his power. So then like the Stormfather becomes Honor in a way. And then at the very end of the Tanavast perspectives in day 9, the last thing that we find out is that the Stormfather was tasked by the power of Honor to find a successor, to find a champion to take up the Shard of Honor. Also at the end of day 9, Azamir falls, and Adolin, Kushkum, Yonagon, and a couple of his like attendants attendants and a couple of like Adeline's guard, they all escape to the safe room or like the safe house that they have set up in Azamir. So they're just like hiding there, and the Fused are taking the city. The interludes are weird. I mean, basically the Odium interlude is just like, okay, it's time, I'm gonna make my moves. But then we also get a perspective of the Mink, where basically he's in Herdaz and like about to be executed, but then he escaped, and as he's running away, this giant, imagine Godzilla-sized chasm fiend or great shell beast appears, and then the interlude just ends. I have no idea what that means. Some of this stuff might have happened in day 9, but at this point, day 9 and 10 are really bleeding together for me. Rlain and Renarin kiss. They smooch on the lips. They find each other in their visions again. They both acknowledge that being together is going to be very difficult because humans and singers both reject them. But Renarin says that he would rather be with him, and then he kisses him. So now we have the big 4 timeline perspectives of things that are going on. We've got Dalinar, who has returned to Urthoru and is about to fight Odium in this Contest of Champions. We've got Szeth, Kaladin, Syl, Nael, and Shinovar about to confront Ishar. We've got Shallan, Rlain, and Renarin who have reunited in the spiritual realm and found Mishram's prison, and they're about to do stuff with that. And then we have Adeline in Azamir. Let's start with Adeline in Azamir, because while they're in this safe house, Yanagon decides, he's like, listen, we have a few hours left before the Contest of Champions. I was a thief before I became the Emperor. Let's sneak into the palace and just steal the throne room, because by Azish law, if they have the throne, if Yanagon the Emperor is on the throne, they have the empire. They decide, they're like, let's just do it. Adeline and everybody are injured. They're down bad, but they're like, let's do it. Let's see what we can make happen. They, with Yanagon's help as a former thief, sneak into the palace through like this like underground like thieves tunnel that like no one knew was there, but Yanagon knew was there. And they're about to enter the throne room when they realize like, okay, this is a little too easy. And they figure out that they are surrounded by Fused. Like the way that they came in, there's an army coming behind them. And then the other 2 exits, there's armies of Fused right there. So they're like in front of the throne room and they're surrounded, and they're like, okay, they enter the throne room and Abidi the monarch is there, and he wants to duel Adeline. So Adeline's like, okay, I'm gonna close these doors and I'm gonna distract this guy. You guys just stay alive. So Adeline starts fighting this man. Adeline, who is super, super injured. He still has a peg leg, obviously. He doesn't have plate and he doesn't have a shard blade. He's about to fight a Fused who has his plate and his shard blade. And so he's like, he uses the aluminum candelabra to like defend himself because aluminum can like resist the shard blades. He's running around trying to survive. He's like, I have to figure out a way to beat him. Meanwhile, in his head this whole time throughout like day 9 and day 10, he realizes that he wants to forgive Dalinar and like he wants to survive so that he can see his father again. He's like about to die. He's like begging for help. He's like, please, someone help me. And the spren of his armor leave Abidi and wrap around Adeline and mold with him again. And so all of a sudden, the rules are reversed. He has his shard blade back because he's able to call Maya, and he has his plate armor, and the plate armor like figures out that there's something going on with his leg, and so it like troubleshoots and like forms around his peg leg so that he like can stand and fight. And on top of all of that, so he defeats Abidi the monarch and then walks out, and so they still have like these armies that are surrounding them, right? And Maya, this whole time that she was in Shadesmar, has been gathering and bringing all of the other Deadeye Spren to Azamir in Shadesmar. And so she and all of the other Deadeye Spren who have lost their radiance, they form into plate and into shard blades, and they form around all of like the people in Adeline's little ragtag gang. So like all of a sudden like Yanagon and Kolot and Kushkum's son and like all of the people that were with them all have plate armor and all have shard blades. And they're like, okay, we have like 30 minutes before the deadline. We just gotta hold it down. That is the last that I saw of them, but such an iconic Avengers Assemble moment. And I'm so happy for Adeline and Maya. Like they have found something that's different than a bond, but that is still a bond in a way. And they're just like so well suited to each other. So that's what's happening happening with them? Dalinar and the Stormfather both make it back. So Dalinar's talking to Wit's like giving him a pep talk, telling him this story, trying to like boost him up. And so Dalinar, like, he kisses Navani goodbye, hopefully not for the last time, and he walks up to the top of the tower onto the platform, like in the sky, and is ready to confront Odium. And so Odium's champion is Gavinor, Dalinar's own grandson, Elokar's son, because Navani thought that she brought Gavinor with her back into the physical realm, but actually that was just some sort of like light weaving being that Odium created. And what actually happens is that Odium takes Gavinor when he's like 5 years old in the spiritual realm and ages him 20 years, and this whole time is like training him to fight Dalinar and showing him all the things that Dalinar did when he was the Blackthorn. And then he brings him into the physical realm after hours have passed in the physical realm and is like, okay, here's your grandson 20 years aged who has like all of this rage and sadness and pain in himself, and all you have to do to beat me is kill this innocent boy. I have no idea what's gonna happen. I stopped right before the chapter where that scene starts to unfold, so I have no idea what's going to come of that, but that's the last that we see of Dalinar. Kaladin, Szeth, Syl, Nael are about to confront Ishar, the Herald, in Shinovar. All of the honor bearers that Szeth has defeated are actually not dead, because Ishar has turned them into human fused. So they have returned and they're back in their bodies, and he's like puppeteering them. Szeth's sister is there, his dad is there, and all of these other honor bearers that he has just defeated are there, and they all start beating the crap out of him because Ishar is like, you need to be humbled, and so you need to lose a fight for once, and Szeth is refusing to fight anyway, so all of these honor bearers are just beating the crap out of him, and Kaladin and Syl are desperately trying to convince Ishar to release the people of Shinovar and trying to help him in any way like they helped Nael, and Ishar is having none of it. They try the flute, and he's like, I wrote those stories, you're a child, shut up with your little child nursery rhymes, Kaladin. They try oaths. Szeth swears the fifth ideal. He skips the fourth, swears the fifth ideal, and that doesn't work, even though they thought it would bring Ishar to like a momentary sense of like sanity again. And then Szeth breaks his bond with his spren, and it's like, you're not the spren for me, I'm sorry. And so they basically break up, but like it doesn't turn him into a Deadeye spren because high spren are the ones who make the oath. But Szeth is like, we're just not working out, and so he breaks up with him, and so then he's not a Radiant anymore, and he's still getting the crap kicked out of him, and he can't even heal with Stormlight. So then he goes over and picks up Nightblood and is like about to use Nightblood, I think, to kill Ishar, but Ishar grabs him, he grabs Kaladin, he grabs Syl, he grabs Nael, all of the honor bearers, and he's like, okay, I'm done messing around. You are now going to feel a fraction of what I carry with all of the pain and suffering of the heralds that I've been bearing on my shoulders for thousands of years. And so he just like shows them this horrible, horrible pain that he has been carrying, trying to like basically crush them all, I guess. And so they're all like writhing on the floor, suffering in pain. And that's the last I saw of them. I really have become attached to Szeth over the course of this book. So if Szeth dies, I'm gonna cry. If Kaladin and Syl don't make it, I am going to be absolutely shattered. Last but certainly not least, Shallan, Renarin, and R'lain are still in the spiritual realm. And at the beginning of day 10, they find Mishram's prison. And it's hidden in one of Malishi, the bondsmith's memories, and his like corpse is there because he basically like drags Mishram's prison into the spiritual realm and then just like dies slowly of old age and starvation, I guess. So they arrive and find Mishram's prison, and then Mraize shows up, and so Shallan is like, I gotta go handle this. You guys figure out what to do with this unmade. So Shallan turns around and starts confronting Mraize, and then Formless shows up again, and she's like, hold on a second. I have been doing so well confronting all of my past memories, and also Mraize has been constantly like dodging the question of where Ayatel is, and Shallan is like, that doesn't make any sense. And so then she goes and she stabs Formless in the face, because Formless this whole time during this stint in the spiritual realm has not actually been Formless, but has been Ayatel in disguise, light weaving herself to look like Formless so that she can spy on Shallan. And so Shallan like takes her anti-light blade and stabs her, and then they get into an altercation, and then Shallan kills her. So Shallan kills Mraize's Babs, which is basically like his mentor. Then Mraize is like, oh my god, what have you done? Like, this is not good. And so then they start to like get in a little bit of a kerfuffle, and we don't know what happens with that yet. And then R'lain and Renarin are staring down at this gemstone that's holding Mishram, trying to decide what to do, and they're like, I think we have to free her. So the last I see of them, they literally are lifting up the gemstone to like throw it down and crack it. And that's it. That's all I have. We got to do this together. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna read the end of this book. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be brave. I did it. I finished. And I am but a shell, but a husk of a woman. I'm dead inside, guys. I feel a lot of things. It's actually been a few days since I finished it because I needed some time to think and process everything, feel all of the feelings before I got on. So I thought as our final Wind and Truth check-in, we could go through, and I'm just going to take you character by character and just talk about where we leave off with them. But first, I wanted to show you guys my tabs. Everything is all in there, all caught up. And then here's what the top looks like. If it wasn't obvious, this is a 5 out of 5 stars. I expected it to be as much. I think the most painful thing is knowing it's gonna be so long before we get to be with these characters again. That's what hurts the most. But like, that's what a great book does. So I went through and I wrote down everybody's sort of ending, I guess. We have to start, I guess, with probably the hardest one for a lot of people, I think, and also to me the most inevitable and obvious one. Dalinar dies. I had a feeling this might happen. I had a feeling it was going to be him or Kaladin. They're just such fan favorites, and also both of them are just at certain points in their journeys where like something pretty big had to happen. So he obviously refuses to kill Gavinor, but he also knows that if he loses and surrenders, he becomes an instrument in Odium's army. He says the word and takes on the Shard of Honor and somehow goes into a vision and talks to like Nohadin, and also he meets the sort of like manifestation of the power of honor, and it is just like a young child. Like mentally, the power of honor is probably the same age that Gavinor was for most of this book, and so he realizes that like even the shard itself, the power of honor, has so much to learn, and they just need time that they don't have. So while he's in the Shard of Honor, he sees a way forward, and that way is for him to renounce his oaths. In doing so, he kills the Stormfather, and Odium takes on the power of honor. So Odium and honor together create retribution. So now Taravangian is this like double god, but in doing that, what Dalinar has done is buy Roshar time, because now that Odium is free, so to speak, or retribution is free, all of the other shards in the Cosmere have no choice but to turn their attention to Roshar and turn their attention to retribution. And he's just overall buying everybody time. But obviously, when he renounces his oaths and becomes just a regular old human again, and the two shards combine, he dies. Before he dies, he, through the connections that he has with everybody, he like sends them his love and his thoughts. I am the least attached to Dalinar, but reading about everybody else feeling the hit of him dying was really, really sad. And then as a last-ditch effort, the last thing he does before he dies is he throws himself over the body of Gavinor and protects him, because Gavinor is also like in sort of like this like blast radius while the shards are combining. So that obviously throws everything out of whack, because he kills the Stormfather, and so there's no more High Storm. The High Storm stops, and also that means there's no Stormlight. So now we basically like have all these radiants that don't have the fuel that they need to, you know, heal or use any of their powers. The next person that we're going to talk about is Kaladin, because this is a pretty good segue into things. So the Spren are vulnerable and under attack by Retribution, because now that Retribution has this power, they know that he's going to try and like absorb all the Spren and like turn them into his like minions and like basically ruin everything. And so over in Shinovar, things are unwinding, and Kaladin swears the fifth ideal, and in doing so like impresses and also maybe like brings Ishar back from the brink of insanity, and also like cleanses the corrupt power of Odium out of Ishar, and Kaladin becomes a freaking herald.
I have like a sort of hunch that Kaladin is actually the one who's going to become a herald.
Kaladin, Stormblessed, becomes a herald, but as soon as they started throwing around the possibility of Szeth becoming a herald, I was like, but wouldn't it make more sense if Kaladin was a herald? And now he and Syl are both immortal. I love what that might mean for their little relationship. We don't get any like real developments as far as that goes. So basically what happens is the wind suggests to Ishar that they reform the Oath Pact and tweak it so that basically the soul and the body of the heralds are going to go to Braze and endure the torture, but their mind get to sort of like exist in a vision between each return so that they don't have the mental torment of torture weighing on their souls and they actually get time to like recuperate. So Kaladin becomes a herald and like joins this Oath Pact, and then all of the heralds leave and go to Braze, but like their minds go to this vision, and it's basically like gearing up for Kaladin's therapy boot camp because they are all hella messed up. But because the heralds have that essence of honor in them and in creating this new Oath Pact, they're able to protect the Spren from retribution. Those are definitely the two craziest things that happen. I am so glad that Kaladin doesn't die, but everybody else thinks he dies, right? So like it's just really sad because no one knows exactly what happened. So in everybody else's estimation, Kaladin is gone and he's dead, but like he's a herald and we're so proud of him. So Szeth, our little baby frickin' bean, is alive. He makes it out. He does lose an arm to Nightblood. So he successfully cleanses his homeland. He's able to finish freeing all of like the little puppets of Ishar by using Nightblood. But in doing so, because he's renounced his oaths and like Kaladin is trying to help him with Stormlight, but they run out of Stormlight and Szeth's not a Radiant anymore. So he does end up losing an arm, but he survives. And then also the like epigraphs at the beginning of all of the chapters in day 10 are from this like female historian who is recounting everything that happens in Shinovar during this period. And then in the very last chapter, you find out that she's Szeth's wife. So that's really nice, knowing that he gets married and maybe gets some semblance of like happiness and peace, and he still has Nightblood with him. Okay, Navani. So the sibling, as soon as Dalinar dies and Retribution is born, the sibling like bursts into Navani's mind and is like, this is a code red. We have to shut down this tower before Retribution comes in here and takes over. So they go into like this cryo sleep situation. They're hibernating essentially to protect Earther from the influence of Retribution. So Navani gets like 0.2 seconds to process the fact that Dalinar is dead, has no time to grieve, and then is immediately put into sleep. Jasna is okay, she's alive, but she's down bad, obviously, still reeling from, you know, everything that happens in losing Thalana to Odium, and also, you know, her uncle, her friend, her mentor has died. Wit is gone, their relationship is over, her mom is in cryo sleep with the sibling, and so she just feels very, very alone, isolated, and just crushed. Gavinor is alive, but now 20? Obviously, I imagine he's gonna have hella emotional damage in the second arc of this series. I feel like he's gonna be like the new Kaladin, you know, like think about like how down bad Kaladin is at the beginning of the Way of Kings. I feel like that's pretty much where Gavinor is gonna start things. He's gonna need some therapy, but the only therapist on Roshar just pieced out to Braze, so I don't know what everybody else with mental health issues is gonna do. Sigzil, so he is again not a Radiant anymore because he renounced his oaths to save Vienta's life. Wit bursts in to like the medical bay in Urithiru and gives him the Dawn Shard, because as soon as Retribution is born, again, Wit is like, okay, he's gonna come for me because I am one of the only other beings on this planet that can challenge him, so he's gonna come right for my neck, and if he finds the Dawn Shard on my person, the Cosmere is doomed. So he gives the Dawn Shard to Sigzil, and he says, okay, Odium's about to come in here and blow me to smithereens. You need to get off planet with this Dawn Shard ASAP, and I will find you somewhere else in the Cosmere and take it back. So he is again giving up the Dawn Shard and presumably going to find it again at some point in the future, so Sigzil ends up in Shadesmar and is trying to find a way out of Shadesmar to get somewhere off planet. Speaking of which, so after he gives Sigzil the Dawn Shard, he is like basically eviscerated by Odium, Taravangian, Retribution, and then he pops back up off-world, basically like he had like a backup clone of himself somewhere, and like by being blown to smithereens in Roshar, he like pops back up in this place, I guess like his home base, his secret lair, if you will, and he realizes that he can't get back to Roshar right away because there's a huge like time warp around the planet now as like a result of the two shards forming. So time is passing really, really, really slowly there in comparison to everywhere else in the Cosmere. So he can't really get information, and also there's something else happening on a different planet in the Cosmere that he has to deal with. But we also see him, at first he's very much like, what the hell did Dalinar do? But then he like consults these dragon bones. I don't know what the hell that man is ever doing, but he basically realizes what Dalinar has done and the sacrifice that he made and how he has bought them all time, and realizes that he's a storming genius. Venli and the listeners get Jasna to sign a treaty giving the Shattered Plains back to the listeners. So they actually, I think, come out the best out of everybody at the end of this book. The listeners do, because they have escaped Odium temporarily, and they also have their land back from the humans now, so they are really able to start like rebuilding their community. Adolin and his crew are able to save Azamir, and so Azamir is free from Odium's influence as well, but because there's no Stormlight, because the Stormfaller's dead, there's no High Storm anymore, the Oath Gates don't work, so he's pretty much stuck in Azamir for right now. Also because there's no more Stormlight, no more Radiant Healing, he is permanently going to be missing a limb, or missing most of his leg. But on the plus side, he's really bonded with Maya and these other unoathed, they're calling themselves, and so all of the Deadeye Spren that came to their aid are, you know, sort of like forming relationships with different unoathed people in Adolin's crew, like Yonagon and Nora and all of them. I mean, it's still really sad, you know. His dad is dead. His best friend, unbeknownst to him, is now off-world and has become a herald. And his wife is stuck in Shadesmar, which we will get to in a minute. Real quick, Renarin and Relaine are in love. But after Dalinar dies, Renarin rejects the throne of Uruthuru and basically says they're gonna set up like a democratic state, more or less. But Relaine and Renarin do make it back to Uruthuru in time before everything happens and the Stormlight runs out and the Oath Gates are shut down. Shallan, however, is not so lucky. I don't know if I told you this, but she does end up killing Mraize, but after Renarin and Relaine free Ba-Otto Mishram, who kind of just like flees into Shadesmar and is MIA at the end of the book, after they do that and Shallan and the rest of them end up in Shadesmar, she gets stuck there. So she is stuck in there with no way out, with no allies. Her husband is in the physical realm. She has no idea if she's ever going to see him again or when she's going to see him again. And so it's just her, Pattern and Testament, against the world, trying to figure out a way out. And then last and absolutely least of all, Taravangian, Retribution, Odium, whatever you want to call him. I like to call him an asshole because he's a little liar. I hate him so much because at the end of the book, you find out that previously when he like sacrificed Carbranth to prove a point and prove that he knows best and everybody else is stupid, he actually didn't sacrifice them. He sneaks them into the physical realm and like recreates Carbranth, so like they have no idea what's happened, but he basically like takes an entire city and hides it in the spiritual realm and then just like goes and visits them and like gets to see his grandkids and, you know, just let all these people live their happy little life, and they have no idea what's going on in the greater Cosmere or in the greater world of Roshar. They just get to live their happy little life. So he's a liar and a hypocrite, and he admits at the end of the book that Dalinar was right, and I'm just so sick of him and his high horse attitude.
I know best. I can make all the sacrifices. I'm Taravangian.
He was smarter when he was a human. I'm so ready for someone to just take him by the throat, you know? But he does find like the remnants of the Blackthorn somewhere in the spiritual realm, and apparently he's gonna harvest that and basically make a clone of Dalinar that's evil. So I'm not really sure what's gonna happen with that, but that's not good. That, my friends, is the end of this vlog. Somehow we made it there. Thank you for coming on this journey with me. I really, really appreciate it. Please know that if you have also finished this book and are crushed by the prospect of having to wait so long, we are in this together. Also, the comment section is definitely a spoiler zone, so feel free to dump your thoughts, your theories, your feelings in there, as long as you don't spoil other Cosmere books in doing so. But anything Stormlight up until the end of Wind and Truth is fair game in my opinion, so I would love to talk about it and know your thoughts and feelings. How do you feel about Dalinar dying? How do you feel about everything else? Thank you so much for stopping by my channel and watching this video today. It really truly means the world to me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if that's your jam, and I hope to see you in my next video. Happy reading, happy writing, and happy living. Peace out.